Thank you for joining me. Sorry I didn't see any of you Monday. You're all not working or not interested in what I had to say on Monday. So I think we are going to revise where we just probably do this on Thursday rather than having the Monday and Thursday deal. Obviously, as questions arise or if you need comment from me earlier, we can do that. But this week was a productive week of committee work on House bills. I went into committee to cast a vote along with Senator David on House Bill 2078, which was the funding formula fixed to make sure that money more closely followed student patterns and we weren't paying for around 55,000 kids that were no longer in the classroom being paid for twice. Proud of that legislation. The historic investments we've made over the last few years are maximized when the money actually follows where that student is more closely, and it actually increases per pupil funding because you are actually getting a more accurate count. So hopefully we'll see that quickly on the floor. Don't know an exact date, but working diligently on that issue. Also working diligently still on utility bills and natural gas. We've been studying what other states in our surrounding area have been doing. Many of them have been doing securitization, some have been doing loan programs. We're evaluating the pluses and minuses on all of those and hope to be able to provide relief to the ratepayers to where they are able to afford their bills. We'll open up to any questions people may have. Barbara has two questions, it looks like. Go ahead, Barbara.
My first question is, have you decided what you're going to do with the Speaker's two tax cut bills?
No, we haven't decided. Those have been assigned to Finance and Propes, I believe. I've got some concerns just because I want to make sure that the economy right now is propped up and our state budget is propped up. We cut more than we had to last session, and we're getting an influx of federal dollars in various forms that are not going to be there year after year. So I want to make sure we look at it globally, but always open, philosophically very much in favor of reduced taxes. Philosophically believe that does spur economic activity. So we'll look at it. I do have some concerns that I'm trying to address. Go ahead with your second one, Barbara.
My second question is concerning the loft report released today on contacts tracing by the State Department of Health. It appears their findings said it was pretty much a failure, more or less. Have you read that report, and what are your thoughts?
Barbara, I'm aware of the report. I have not read the report, so I'd appreciate the opportunity to read it, and then I'd be more than happy to get back to you on that. I have had some conversations with the health department and others about that, but I really need to read that report before I comment on
it. This one. Okay, got it. Can I ask about Senator Jett, and when were you made aware that he had hired his cousin as his executive assistant?
I was made aware that you had reached out to him about the issue, and we immediately said he needed to take action. And so it was that was in the evening that I heard about it, and the following day was her last day of employment at the Senate.
He told a local TV station that he cited an AG's opinion from 1980 and notes that that AG's opinion does not include cousins of any kind within the third degree of consanguinity. And he told a local TV station that he might offer her job back. What are your thoughts on that? I
saw that comment. I immediately went to address it personally. That she will not be hired back as his EA. That is fourth degree of consanguinity, but I think it's bad practice to have family members supervising other family members regardless of that degree of relation. And so because that I was not aware that he had hired his cousin in the first place, I would have rejected that had I known that. And I have instituted as of yesterday a policy for the Senate that no member of the Senate shall ever supervise any family member, regardless of the degree of consanguinity. There are within the Senate people who are related to each other, but no one has a supervisory role over anyone else. It complicates things greatly in management, and we're not going to allow that to happen.
I mean, no offense in this, but how did this happen? And I say this because in the newsroom the other day, we were having a legitimate discussion about like when state employees have to fill out paperwork, don't they have to list conflict of interest? And I don't know for sure, I've never worked for the state, but shouldn't they have to say somewhere? I don't know.
Conflicts of interest are typically with political, either elected or appointed positions or executive nominations. We're reevaluating our hiring practices to make sure that we don't have that situation. Again, he did nothing illegal. He was within the confines of the law, but it's not within the confines of the Senate policy as of yesterday, because we needed to update those. Had it been disclosed up front that he was wishing to hire his cousin, that wouldn't have been permitted. But he didn't do anything deceptive or nefarious on his end. It's a new policy that we will make sure that members get to hire an executive assistant within reason. The pro tem typically does not insert. I typically don't insert myself in that process unless there's some issue. The rest of the staff, I'm much more involved in the employment. Okay,
I have a non-Senator Jett question. House Bill 2504 from Representative Kennedy, it affects the Oklahoma City County Department of Health, and as somebody who represents that area, have you looked at it yet? Have you given it any thought?
Yes, I've had a lot of discussions, a lot of thought on that bill. I have concerns about it. Most major metropolitan areas across the United States have independent city county health departments or multiple counties or cities. So I want to look at it. I understand one of the reasons I was supportive of the catastrophic health emergency early on was so the governor could consolidate and make sure we were all rowing in the same direction. So I understand that desire, but I want to see what unintended consequences if we put those all together. So yeah, I have some concerns there. And I've voiced those concerns and am looking into it.
I was hoping to actually publish an article while we're doing this. Not going to happen.
You were hoping what?
I was trying to actually publish an article, but I just...
Oh, I'm sorry we interrupted your ability to...
No, I was hoping she'd keep talking.
We can all wait, you know.
No, I don't think we should. I need to probably proofread it. Question, if I'm not mistaken, I think when I saw you upstairs, you were going around the corner to a lunch with the GRDA folks. Did you make it in there, or did you stop along the way?
I made it in there, but I was not going to that meeting. I was going to talk to a senator about an unrelated issue.
Well, the issues at hand, there seems to be some discussion about, the broader electricity market in Oklahoma, the topics of deregulation, and some of the other things. They had a bill earlier this session that wasn't heard, although it could come back if it was something that you wanted to do regarding their bonding capacity. I just didn't know whether there was a general, there seems to be a lot of energy in the building about energy stuff right now, and I didn't know if you could kind of get us up to speed on where those discussions are.
So let me ask you to clarify, did you say that I was supportive of the bond bill? Is that what you're...
No. I said if you didn't make the deadline for committee, you didn't make the deadline, but if you wanted to bring out a policy measure, you and the speaker could do that, if I'm not mistaken. So that's what I didn't mean that you are for it.
No, I've had concerns that I've expressed before in committee 3-4 years ago. I had a bill to look at selling some GRDA assets, and at that same time they were trying to increase their bonding capacity to unlimited, and I had some concerns then. I've talked to Dan Sullivan a lot about their business model and about what's going on there. the bill that you're referring to that did not advance, we were still trying to figure out exactly why they needed that doubling of their bonding capacity. Still had some concerns, questions, and have been researching that. As far as energy on the whole, deregulation sounds really, really good until you look at what happened in Texas and some other parts of the country and other areas. I'm a free market guy, but when you look at SPP and how intricately woven together our systems are and how you can really normally benefit, and if you look at the SPP market overall, in Oklahoma in particular, we fared much better than some of our neighbors on our grid resiliency. Yes, we have some price spikes that we're having to look at and deal with, but we didn't have the controlled outage at the same level. It was very minimal. Anytime you have to do that, that's a concern, and we want to look into that and understand it better. But the 14 county footprint of SPP has served us quite well, and the regulated utility has served our state quite well through this as well. So conversations are ongoing, and I don't think you'll see a huge push for deregulation that some may have prior to this winter storm.
I guess my follow-up question would be, you mentioned earlier that in addition to securitization, well, let's talk two things. You said securitization, and other states are doing some loans of some sort. I guess first on the loans, what type of entities would possibly be getting like a loan from that, and who would make that loan? Would that be the state, or is that a bonding agency capacity? What would that look like, and what type of entity would potentially be eligible for that if that was something you guys did?
So the details are still being ironed out, and I'm trying to get a better understanding of what's happening in the other states. I will tell you, generically speaking, the regulated entities versus the non-regulated, they're two different animals altogether. Some municipalities, I think last count for me was 52 municipalities, have their own natural gas service of some sort, and then you have OMPA and you have GRDA on top of that. Then you have co-ops, and then you have the regulated. Then you have some entities, larger industrial entities or power users, that have direct contracts with gas providers. So it's a very complicated system to try to wrap your mind around. In the other states that you've seen securitization in the past 30 years, it's been after a hurricane, or sometimes it was to transition from coal to natural gas or some other source that wasn't coal. But it's typically been used in emergency situations. Kansas is looking at one model, Texas is looking at a different model, and Arkansas is looking at another model. They're all different. Some include securitization, where the state has a bonding authority and then works that way through an authority. Others are just simply allowing the regulated entities to securitize their own debt. And then some are doing a modified securitization through the state, plus allowing utilities to do it. The real crux of the situation is you're never supposed to make money off the fuel, the base fuel to provide the electricity, and so all states look at that differently. I'm studying those as we have been meeting over the last few weeks. Senator Leewright's been doing a good job of keeping me abreast of what's going on with his conversations. But there are a multitude of ways you do it. As far as the loans that you asked about, loans are probably, in most instances that I've seen, have been to those similar communities like you see in Oklahoma, the Jays and the Grove, where they're the municipal-owned utilities that don't have the same capitalization that maybe some private sector companies do. But no decisions have been made. We're just studying and looking at that.
You have one more. Okay. You talked about the securitization. the article I'm about to put out is regarding the situation involving hospitals, and some of them are having $1 million, multi-million-dollar bills as well. Is there any, if the state securitizes these debts, is that something I've learned in the last 2 hours, what securitization means, but is there something being discussed that, hospitals are a little different than, manufacturer, but at the same time, they're nonprofit entities that, have massive ownership structures. So how do you balance the need for those entities to survive in their communities, but also, respect the fact that they're not public entities themselves?
It's a multi-layer onion when you start pulling back all the layers. When you caught me in the hallway, you talked about, I think, an $11 million bill. I'm not familiar with that particular instance, so I don't know if they are going to incur an $11 million bill through a regulated entity. I can't fathom that. I think it's probably a direct contract that they have. You get involved in contracting, and it's a messy nightmare. So we'll look at that. I would appreciate more information on that. But these entities that directly contract with some gas provider that subject themselves to spot price, I'm not sure how much can be done.
Barbara has another question. Go ahead, Barbara.
Pro Tem, this week, Attorney General Whitener appointed a special prosecutor to investigate the Oklahoma Park and Parole Board. That comes after David Prater sued the board and Governor Stitt. Do you have any concerns in that area? Have you gotten concerns from members of your caucus or constituents that basically the board's not following the rules, and maybe some folks on that board have a conflict of interest?
I'm aware of it and do have concerns. You want to make sure that if you have a process to allow people out early or whatever, that you thoroughly vet that. I have some concerns when I read about this gentleman perhaps coming back up before the board before it was appropriate, and I look forward to seeing what the conclusion of those investigations. I have no inside track on knowing what those investigations are, but I'm watching those closely, and sure, I do have both constituents and caucus members, not just caucus members, members on both sides of the aisle that have concerns about that.
How's redistricting going?
Redistricting is going well. We're waiting on, data is hard to come by from the census this year. So we have the bifurcated process where we will have to treat congressional and legislative at different times because we won't have the data necessary to comply with the congressional until sometime this fall. And we'll have to use the American Community Survey, the ACS, estimations between 2015 and 19 to get us in par, across all the Senate districts. But it's going well. Senator Paxton's doing an excellent job leading that committee. Senator Brooks and Senator Rader are doing a good job. It's a bipartisan effort, having very good conversations.
You said this fall, does that imply special session?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have...
And Trace, let me explain why. The Constitution of the State of Oklahoma requires that we get legislative redistricting done before sine die of the session immediately following the completion of the U.S. Census. And so the question becomes, is the completion of the U.S. Census when they stop counting or when they release the data to us? To be in compliance, we feel like we need to have legislative redistricting done this session to have sine die, because the census was completed last year, even though we don't have the numbers and won't have the numbers until sometime this fall. And so we'll have legislative redistricting done, and then we'll hypothetically, but we will absolutely have to come into special session to do congressional redistricting, because you have to have an exact number of people per district in that. And then anywhere where the variances are too big from the legislative redistricting we complete this spring, we can adjust those in that special session.
Say one more time, when do you expect to get that data from them?
Sometime this fall. That has changed over the course, so I hesitate to say an exact time, but sometime this fall.
And the Oklahoma Constitution requires just legislative redistricting to be done by the end of the session, not congressional districting.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Do you think that in a way that, finishing up redistricting in a special session will kind of be good in that you won't have all these other things that you're worrying about, the budget, all these bills that you need to tackle. You can focus solely on redistricting?
It's the only option we have. So, yes, I'll be optimistic. I think it's going to be awesome.
Ever the optimist.
All right, can we just put that for October when we're back in?
Yes, we can.
We've got one last question from Brian. Go ahead, Brian.
All right, hello, Senator. I have a question about concerning on the border on U.S. and Mexico. You know how there are thousands of immigrants waiting to be having their cases finalized over there, and also here in Oklahoma. What has Oklahoma or Oklahoman politicians done to help speed up the process of immigration cases?
That is wholly a federal issue that we have no say over here at the state capitol. So I'm sure that our federal delegation could probably be better equipped to answer that question.